Hare Krishna. Warm welcome to all the devotees who have joined this Gita Jayanthi special series of 18 chapters in 18 days. Although it was not 18 consecutive days, we had a few interruptions due to festivals. So today we're going to begin the last third of the Bhagavad Gita, which begins with chapter 13. Chapter 13 is an interesting chapter. It's also one of the most difficult chapters to understand. There's a lot of, what can we call it? Maybe we can say technical information that's given. And chapter 13 also begins with Arjuna asking questions. But before we do that, let's look at what we discussed in chapter 12. So in chapter 12, we discussed Arjuna asking a question about which is a better form of worship, whether it is worshipping the personal form of the Lord or whether it is worshipping the impersonal form of impersonal aspect of the Lord. The Lord has both. He's both impersonal and personal. It's not that the Lord does not have an impersonal feature. He does have an impersonal feature. But the Lord himself prefers that we worship his personal form. That is the opinion that he gives, where he says that the devotees who worship him in his personal form are the most perfect. So if the Lord himself is saying they are the most perfect, then you can also understand what actually pleases the Lord. What type of worship pleases the Lord. It is not that Jnana Yoga is not an authentic transcendental path. It is not that Karma Yoga is not an authentic transcendental path. It's also not that Dhyana Yoga is not an authentic transcendental path. All paths that the Lord speaks about in the Bhagavad Gita are authentic. However, if the nature of the soul is to experience eternal bliss, and if the objective of the Jivatma is to go back to the spiritual world, if that is important for us, then we would practice Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga also happens to be the most complete form of transcendental approach, because through this approach, you understand the Sat, Chit and Ananda features of the Lord. The Lord has three features, Sat, Chit and Ananda. With Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga, you only have a incomplete realization. So if your realization is incomplete, then you have not fully understood the Supreme Lord. So the most complete understanding of the Supreme Lord Krishna comes through the practice of Bhakti Yoga. But the Lord is so merciful. He says, become my pure devotee first. That's the Lord's personal preference. But if you can't become his pure devotee, he expands to include sadhana bhakti. And he further expands to include working for Krishna, karma yoga. If we can't work for Krishna, then at least we can offer the results to Krishna. If we can't do that, then the Lord gives an alternative of Jnana Yoga, and then he says Dhyana Yoga is better than Jnana Yoga, but better than Jnana and Dhyana Yoga is Nishkama Karma Yoga. So the Lord is simply expanding the net of who he considers to be on the proper path of spirituality. However, as an institution, set up by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, under the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his close associates. For Kali Yuga, Bhakti Yoga is the most ideal path. It is easy. It is so simple that it's so difficult to practice. So sometimes we have this tendency that if something is very easy or simple, you must think that it is not a topmost path. It's just the nature of human being that something has to be difficult, and then you have to accomplish that difficult thing, and then you think, oh, that must be topmost. But that is not the case here with Bhakti Yoga. It may be simple, it may be easy, but it is the most transcendental way of getting to know who the Supreme Lord is and to re-establish one's relationship with Him. Therefore, Krishna emphasizes Bhakti Yoga throughout the Bhagavad Gita. As a matter of fact, starting from chapter 2 all the way to chapter 18, the Lord emphasizes Bhakti Yoga at the end of each chapter. Even though he is talking about other topics like Jnana Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, if you recall in chapter 6, the Lord speaks about Dhyana Yoga. He talks about Hatha Yoga, Kriya Yoga. But at the end of the chapter, what is the Lord saying? Yeah, Dhyana Yoga, they are topmost yogis, he says, no doubt about it. But then my devotees are better. So after going through the yoga ladder and the Lord expanding the definition of practicing spirituality, essentially what does the Lord want you to do? The Lord wants you to acknowledge that He exists. That's the starting point. So if you're practicing karma yoga, then you know and you acknowledge that there is a Supreme Lord Krishna. If you're practicing Jnana Yoga, then you are focusing on the Lord's Brahman feature. If you're practicing Dhyana Yoga, you are focusing on the Lord's Paramatma feature. And if you're practicing Bhakti Yoga, you are focusing on the Lord's Bhagavan feature, which is the most complete understanding of the Supreme Lord. So anyone practicing any of these paths is on the right path. Ultimately, it should lead to Bhakti Yoga at some point in time. If not in one life, maybe in several lifetimes. It will take you there. There's a wonderful analogy that Prabhupada used to use to understand this yoga ladder a little bit better. So let us say there is a 100-story building and we need to get to the top of that building. And you are given, let's just say for the sake of the analogy, you are given 3 choices. You can climb up the steps, all 100 flights of steps to reach the top floor. You can take the lift, or there is a rope dangling from the top floor. You can try to climb up the rope and get all the way to the top. Now, a sensible, intelligent person knows that getting to the top floor is going to be very difficult using the rope. It's going to be a little less difficult using the staircase. And it's going to be extremely easy using the lift. So a sensible and intelligent person, if they are given a challenge of getting to the top floor, they would use the easiest and simplest method to get to the top, the fastest method to get to the top, which would be to use the lift. So similarly, Bhakti Yoga is that lift. The fastest way for us to get back to Krishna is by using the lift to elevate ourselves on the spiritual consciousness path. You could say Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is probably like climbing the steps, and Dhyana Yoga is like getting using that rope. So using that rope, you have no assistance. You have to depend on yourself. Climbing that steps, you have to use your own willpower and physical prowess to get through those 100 stairs. But when the Lord says the other paths are difficult and troublesome, what does he mean? Let us say you feel that you're up to the challenge and you want to take the Dhyana Yoga path. Somewhere along the way, if you lose confidence in yourself and or if you lose the willpower, you're going to let go of the rope and drop down. Similarly, if you're climbing up the stairs, beyond a certain point, if you feel too tired, you're not motivated, let's say you're doing this climb all by yourself. Same thing, you're climbing up the rope all by yourself. It becomes very, very difficult. You may give up. That's why the Lord says the other paths are troublesome and difficult. The risk of you giving up, the risk of you not succeeding in one life is very high. Whereas if you get into the lift or the elevator, you're there in probably a few seconds at the 100th floor of the building. So a sensible, intelligent person is not going to say that using the lift is for simple people. It's for sentimental people. They don't want to work hard. That's why they're taking the lift. The question is speed, intelligence, and also the joy. When you're practicing Bhakti Yoga, we said you're doing it in the association of other devotees. That without the association of other devotees, as a matter of fact, Prabhupada has said repeatedly and acharyas have said repeatedly, those who are practicing Krishna consciousness or Vaishnavism, we are made up, our body is made up of the mercy of all of the Vaishnavas, which means we are propelled forward on this path because we come into contact with Vaishnavas. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga is the most sublime. The other thing we need to remember is in the other paths like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Dhyana Yoga, there is no reciprocation from the Lord. Because you've not asked for the Lord to come into your life. You're not worshipping the Lord. Whereas when you worship the personal aspect of the Lord, His form, then the Lord will reciprocate. As we read in one of the shlokas yesterday, the Lord says that my devotees are the topmost, and then He says, I personally help them make progress. So, having said all of this, the choice is always ours. We have that amount of free will that you can choose whichever path is suitable for you. But at the same time, Krishna expects you to use your intelligence and at least try and follow his instructions and his opinion that he's given in many chapters of why Bhakti Yoga is so sublime. So we talked about the Lord expands the definition of how you can come to him. So essentially the Lord is saying, it's not only Bhakti Yoga that will bring you to me. Other yogas ultimately will culminate in you coming back. The question is, how quickly do you want to go up that ladder? And then for shlokas, from shlokas 13 to 20, the Lord is glorifying his devotees, how they deal with themselves, how they deal with others, and how do they handle difficult situations, and how do they handle dualities in life. Of the 35 different qualities that Krishna talks about between shlokas 13 to 20, Shraddha is the most important, faith. So when Lord Ram defeats Ravana and comes back to Ayodhya, he invites everyone, including Vibhishan, and all the other Vanaras to come to Ayodhya for the coronation ceremony. And so everybody goes in the Pushpaka Vimana. And at the end of the festival, one of the Rakshasas who was accompanying Vibhishana says, I want to go back to Lanka. And the Pushpaka Vimana is no longer available. It brought them from Lanka to Ayodhya, but it was a one-way ticket. So the Pushpaka Vimana is not available. So how is this person going to get back to Lanka, which is like 800 miles or so from Ayodhya? So Vibhishan says, very simple, I'm going to give you something very special. Just hold it in your hands and it will allow you to walk on the water. Of course, he has to walk on land, but then how is he going to cross the ocean? So he says, you keep this in your hand and you will be able to walk on water. So this Rakshasa reaches the shores of the ocean and then he needs to cross the ocean to get onto the other side and into the Lanka island. So he is holding this scroll in his hand, and sure enough, he's able to walk on water. Now, until he begins to walk on water, he had not looked at what was in the scroll. So suddenly it occurs to him, I have defeated so many uh, different demons. I'm such a powerful warrior. I'm sure I don't need the scroll to cross the water. I can do it on my own strength. But out of curiosity, he opens the scroll to see what was in that scroll. Why did Vibhishana say, hold this in your hand as you're crossing over the ocean? So he opens the scroll and he sees nothing but the names of Lord Ram written over and over and over again. That makes him even more skeptical. That's it? The scroll had the holy names of Lord Ram? That was it? That was what was helping him walk on the water? So he thinks, look at me, I have become so weak, so fearful that I need the assistance of some scroll with the name of the Lord written on it to get across the water. So what does he do? He tosses the scroll into the ocean and soon thereafter he drowns. So when we begin to think that we can do anything and everything on our own, that we really don't need the Lord's blessing and mercy at every single moment and every single second of our life, then we throw away everything that we have worked towards. So that's why Krishna says in chapters 8, 9, 10, 12 that his devotees are very determined. They don't give up, no matter what. So nothing can shake a devotee's faith in Krishna. Once they've experienced the joys of worshipping Krishna, there is no going back for a devotee. So that's the beauty of practicing Bhakti Yoga. No matter what happens, you will do your best not to give up this path because it works. It works. It does help you. So today we're going to begin chapter 13. Chapter 13 is titled Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. Srila Prabhupada translates this title as nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. So, as we said, usually others who are pursuing other paths like Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, they view bhakti as being something very passive, something very sentimental. You just sit in one place and do bhajans all day and nothing else. And you say, "Oh Lord, I love you, I love you, I love you." That's all you do. So it is seen as something very inert and full of emotions. Some people believe that you have to subdue your emotions in order to conquer yourself. Of course, an aspect of that is true if you want to make advancement in spirituality also. But the Lord likes emotions, right? But when we read Srila Prabhupada's book, he gives a definition of bhakti that we may not have heard of before. That bhakti is not devotion. Bhakti is actually devotional service. There are actually two types of devotees. There are many types, layers of practices of bhakti as well. There are two types of main categories of bhaktas. There are some devotees of Krishna who like to be by themselves and do a lot of bhajan. They are called bhajananandis. And there is another category called Goshtyanandis. The Goshtyanandi, they are also worshipping Krishna, but they're extremely active in spreading the message of Krishna. They feel a sense of urgency in wanting to reach out to as many jivatmas as possible and bring them to the path of bhakti. It's not that the Bhajananandi, what they're doing, they're practicing Krishna consciousness on their own, is wrong. It just doesn't align with what Krishna says in chapter 18. In chapter 18, the Lord says that the devotee who is spreading this knowledge and actively engaged in preaching is his best friend. Krishna says, "There's no one more dear to me than my devotee who is in that missionary mood," right? Missionary mood means you want to expand the mission. You want to, like a fisherman who's going fishing for fish, he tries to cast his net far and wide so he can catch as many fish as possible. So that is that missionary mood that Srila Prabhupada demonstrated time and time again. At the ripe old age of 70, he goes over to the United States on a boat, suffers multiple heart attacks on the way to the US. He doesn't know if he's going to survive or not, but he tells Krishna, "My spiritual master gave me this instruction to go to the West and preach in English. And if that's what you desire, then that's what will happen." As a matter of fact, I was reading some of my notes from earlier classes that we had given. That one aspect of prayer, we said, is to ask the Lord for what you want. But at the same time, also let the Lord know that He can decide. You can petition, but He can decide what's best for you. And a wonderful example of that from Srimad Bhagavatam is when Krishna subdues the serpent Kaliya. Krishna doesn't kill Kaliya, he just subdues and extracts all the venomous aspects of Kaliya. His pride, he subdues his pride. Kaliya has many, many wives. They are called Nagapatnis. When Krishna dances on the hoods of Kaliya and leaves his lotus feet imprints on each of those hoods. Kaliya thinks he's going to die the way Krishna was dancing. And the wives are amazed. They are all devotees of Lord Krishna. The Nagapatnis are devotees of Lord Krishna, but they are amazed that the Lord is benedicting this husband of theirs who's filled with venomous anarthas like pride, envy, arrogance. And the Lord is placing his lotus feet on someone like their husband. So when they notice their husband struggling, they offer prayers to Lord Krishna. They tell the Lord, my dear Lord, please spare our husband, Kaliya. We know he is a rascal. But if you kill him, we have to associate with other snakes. And then they tell the Lord, we have made our request. Now you can do as per your will. So similarly, when we offer prayers as well, and we want something to happen in our life, when we offer our prayer, we can use the same approach as the Nagapattis. Actually, it is said for those who are having problems in their relationships, in marital relationships, where the other half is opposed to bhakti, which happens, um, that you should recite the prayers of the Nagapatni. It's because of the prayers of the Nagapatni that Kaliya also becomes subdued and becomes a devotee of the Lord. So, offering prayers for and on behalf of your spouse, following the example of the Nagapatnis, is quite impactful. So, as we said, Prabhupada defines bhakti as devotional service. Service means activity. Yoga means activity also. So, the differences in bhakti yoga, you are engaging your mind, your senses, your intelligence, and your soul. In karma yoga, you're using only your physical body and your senses. In jnana yoga, you're using your intellect. In dhyana yoga, you are trying to control your mind. But in bhakti yoga, you are engaging everything in the service of the Lord. So the five gross senses, the subtle body, as well as the soul is fully engaged in bhakti yoga. Narada Muni defines bhakti yoga as follows: Hrishikena, Hrishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Meaning, Hrishikena, meaning using all your eight senses, your five gross senses and your three subtle senses, to serve Hrishikesha, who is the master of all senses. That's why the Lord has the name Hrishikesha. So for Hrishikesha, we should use Hrishikena, all our senses, to perform bhakti. Then the Lord becomes very, very pleased. So we talked about the different levels of bhakti and different levels of surrender in chapter 12, how devotees are endowed with those 35 qualities, beginning with Shraddha being the most important one. And in Shloka 6 and 7, the Lord personally states how he takes care of his devotees on his own. And he says, I swiftly deliver them from the ocean of death. Imagine the Lord saying, I swiftly deliver them. Meaning you just have to be on the path. And the Lord is that, The mercy of the Lord is that elevator, that lift that just swoops you up to the top floor. I swiftly deliver them from the ocean of death. So how is chapter 13 connected to chapter 12? So we'll find out. Before we begin, let's offer our humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. So today's acronym is WISE. Arjuna asks some wise questions, essentially questions about 6 aspects which are considered to be the items of knowledge. And then the Lord talks about how we need to understand ourselves, how we need to understand the Supersoul, and how we need to understand Prakriti, and how does one become enlightened. Towards the end of this class, I will talk about what this section 3 is all about. Since we said the single word summary for section 3 is Prakriti, or material nature, and it is also known as Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga, which means a lot more philosophy in the last 6 chapters. Actually, the 18th chapter is a summary of the Bhagavad Gita, especially chapter 13 onwards. So let us see, how does chapter 13 begin? Arjuna said, "Oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called a field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field." So the Lord is quickly responding to Arjuna's 6 questions. What is Arjuna's 6 questions? What is Prakriti? What is Purusha? What is Kshetra? What is Kshetrajna? What is Jnana and what is Jnaya? So Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajna, Jnana and Jnaya. So Prakriti is nature, Purusha is the enjoyer. Kshetra is the body in which we reside. Kshetrajna is the person who knows the body. There are 2 people who know the body, Jivatma and Paramatma. Knowledge and Jnana and Jnaya. Jnana is you use knowledge to achieve the object of knowledge, which is Krishna. So we'll come to the slides which will make it a little bit more clear. So Krishna is saying this body is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. So Krishna has answered the questions, what is Kshetra and what is Kshetrajna? Kshetra is this body, Kshetrajna is the person who knows this body. O scion of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. So there are 2 knowers of each body. Each Jivatma has 2 knowers, the Jivatma and Paramatma. And to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. So Krishna is saying, what is knowledge? Understanding Jivatma and understanding Paramatma is knowledge. Remember, Krishna defines the supreme science in chapter 4. He talks about the eternal relationship between Jivatma and Paramatma. That is considered knowledge. Krishna is saying, that is my opinion. Now please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activities is, and what his influences are. So now Krishna is going to talk about matter, Jivatma, and finally Paramatma. Essentially the 3 main topics in the Bhagavad Gita across the 18 chapters. So Krishna says that knower of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. Krishna is saying if you want to understand the cause and effect of everything, you need to read the Vedanta Sutra, which is a summary commentary by Srila Vyasadeva on all of the Vedas. But these sutras are aphorisms, they are like little puzzles. They may be just made of 2 or 3 words, but to understand those words, you need great acharyas to explain. For example, Aham Brahmasmi, Athato Brahma Jijnasa. These are all from the Vedanta Sutra. So now Krishna is going to define matter. So I think somebody just posted a question on the 8 senses. Here it comes. The 5 great elements: false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions. All these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interaction. Krishna is defining the body. The body here is not just the physical human body, but the body coming in touch with matter as well. And then Krishna talks about these qualities: humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Krishna has talked about the importance of Guru in chapter 4, and again here in chapter 13, the importance of Guru. Cleanliness, steadiness, self control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So, at first, Krishna said, what is knowledge? Understanding Jivatma, understanding Paramatma is knowledge. Understanding Jivatma, the Lord has expanded that definition to include all of these characteristics that a human being has to have. So now, coming back to the slides. So, the first 2 shlokas is Arjuna's question and a portion of the answer by Krishna. We've already read this, so we'll just recite the shloka. Arjuna uvacha prakritim purusham chaiva kshetram kshetrajnameva cha etadveditumicchami jnanam jneyam cha keshava. Shri Bhagavanuvacha idam shariram kaunteya kshetram ityabhidhiyate etadyo veti tam prahuhu kshetrajna iti tadvidah. So what are the 6 questions Arjuna has asked? What is Prakriti? Prakriti is material nature. And the definition of material nature will be expanded in chapter 14 actually. Who is Purusha? Purusha is the enjoyer. Krishna has already said in chapter 5 in Sloka 29, Bhoktaram Yajñatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantim Richyati. Krishna is going to repeat and say Purusha means I am the only enjoyer. So the word Purusha means enjoyer. That means Prakriti is meant to be enjoyed by Purusha. Shaktiman enjoys Shakti. Purusha enjoys Prakriti. Jnana. We just read right now how Krishna defines knowledge. Jnayam. What is the object of knowledge? The object of knowledge is twofold: self-realization and God-realization. In Jnana Yoga, you focus on self-realization. In Dhyana Yoga, you focus on self-realization. In Bhakti Yoga, you focus on God realization, because God realization includes self-realization. I hope that makes sense. When you realize God, you automatically have also realized yourself. Whereas in Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga, it's a two-step process. You begin with self-realization, and maybe if you have time, you do God realization. But Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga are geared towards self-realization, not God realization. But Krishna says, if you try to realize me, I will help you realize yourself. So the object of knowledge for us is Krishna. Kshetra is the body, and Kshetrajna, the knower of the body, and we've discovered that the knower of the body is both the soul and the super soul. But there is a difference between the soul and super soul. As Krishna has said in chapter 2, never was there a time where I did not exist, nor you, Arjuna, nor all these kings who are there before you. And then Krishna says, I know what everybody and what all bodies people have taken in chapter 4, but you don't know. When Arjuna asks Krishna, how come you know? How come you are saying you gave this knowledge to Vivaswan, the sun god? Krishna says, I have appeared many times. I know everything that I've done, but you don't. You also appeared many times, Arjuna, but you don't remember all your appearances. So the super soul is the super knower of all bodies. The soul, at best, if at all, can only know its own body. So if I get a paper cut, only I can experience the pain. Nobody else can experience the pain. They may be empathetic to your pain, but still, that pain is only experienced by you. So you can only know your own body. The super soul is the supreme proprietor and controller. We are only the secondary proprietor and controller. Prabhupada uses this analogy also. It just came into my mind. In a relationship with the mother and the child, when the mother is cooking, initially the child wants to do everything that the mother is doing. But in this case, the mother, in order to keep the child engaged, gives the child, what do you call it? Toys with which they can play and pretend that they are the mother or they are the father. But the child is only playing with toys. They are not really actually making anything real. But in their imagination, they're making something real. So we are like that children. We've been given all these toys. We think we're making something real. It's just imaginary. We're not making anything real because everything real is there in the spiritual world. So we're just pretending to be the proprietor and controller by moving, by influencing matter. Krishna says in chapter 8 that the superior energies of his, which are the Jivatma, the Tathastha Shakti, they are just manipulating Mother Nature. So the only proprietor and controller, or the supreme proprietor and controller, is Krishna. Krishna is infallible and always superior to spirit soul. Krishna never makes mistake. And he knows everything about you, therefore he is always superior. Whereas a Jivatma has a tendency to make mistakes. And the Jivatma's role is to be subordinate to Super Soul, subordinate to Paramatma. So the items of knowledge, Krishna has given all those various qualities, right, that we read from 8 to 12. All of this Krishna considers to be knowledge. Knowledge means this is all on the path of self-realization. So if you put it in a summary format, knowledge of your body, which is Prakriti, knowledge of soul, and knowledge of supersoul. So it comes back to the triangle of three aspects of this Bhagavad Gita: Jivatma, Paramatma, Prakriti. If you have understood all three, you can embark on the path of self-realization. Without that, you cannot embark on the path of self-realization. So these are 20 qualities Krishna is talking about in shlokas 8 to 12. Let's look at those qualities again, and then we will discuss this. So in order to pursue the path of self-realization, Krishna has to give you some technical knowledge now. That is the whole purpose of the last 6 chapters of chapter 13, starting from chapter 13. Although, again, at the end of each chapter, Krishna is going to emphasize again and again Bhakti Yoga. But he does understand that not all personalities may be willing to listen to him. So he has to give us choices on the transcendental path. So body and soul, Krishna has already described in detail in chapters 2 and 3. So now he focuses on the internal aspects now. So you could say the cause and effect Krishna is going to actually focus on in this particular chapter. So this last 6 chapters is also called Sankhya Yoga, which is an analytical study of nature, the soul, and the supersoul, beginning with nature. Okay. So let's look at these qualities. Humility. We already talked about humility, I think yesterday, when we talked about the pastime of Akbar giving a challenge of the 2 lines, how to make one line short without shortening any one of the lines, which is to actually just increase the length of one line, then the other line becomes shorter. So here, Krishna is talking about humility as the first word here. Without humility, one cannot approach the Supreme Lord. Without humility, one cannot receive the mercy of Guru. One of the disciples of Prabhupada asked him, Prabhupada, what is humility? And Prabhupada says, when you know that your wealth is not going to protect you, your family is not going to protect you, your nation is not going to protect you, your guns are not going to protect you, and you know the only person you can rely on is the Supreme Lord, that is humility, because you realize you are helpless without the intervention of the Supreme Lord, right? One can become humble by glorifying others, says one of Prabhupada's disciples, His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. But humility, Maharaj says, does not mean thinking less of oneself. It is thinking of oneself less, which means it seems like a riddle, but let's just unpack that. Humility does not mean beating up yourself. Humility means thinking more of others than yourself. So I thought that was a very nice way to remember what humility really means. It's not that you are not good enough, you're not this, you're not that. That is not humility. Humility is focusing on service to others. We can always think we are the worst, we are the most fallen. Of course, internally we can think like that so that we can try and make some progress, but not to the point where you lose any determination and some confidence to move along on this path. So there is a nice pastime in our parampara, the Gaudiya Vaishnava parampara. So there was a very famous Vaishnava scholar by the name of Rupa Narayanan. He was a scholar in Vrindavan, and his favorite pastime was to go from devotee to meet other scholars, defeat them, and get a certificate saying that he has defeated them. So all his life he was collecting certificates like this of his victory in various debates. That was his personal pastime. Finally, he comes to a personality called Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami is a very, very important acharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara. We study a lot of his books and his philosophy, and his writings and explanations on bhakti are very, very dear to devotees in ISKCON. So he's a stalwart. He is a disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So anyway, this Rupa Narayana comes to Rupa Goswami and he wants to get a certificate. He wants to get into a debate with Rupa Goswami, win him over in the debate and get another certificate saying, yes, I have defeated this person too in a debate. See how great I am. So when Rupa Goswami was told that he this personality Rupa Narayana wants to debate him, he just said, "Oh, no need of a debate. I will give him a certificate." And he gave a certificate and told that Rupa Narayana has defeated me in a debate. He is greater than me. So what happened is Rupa Goswami's nephew, who's also one of the 6 Goswamis called Jiva Goswami, was also in Vrindavan serving his uncle. Jiva Goswami was also a great philosopher, a great acharya. So he thought, wait a minute, how can I allow someone else to defeat my spiritual master? I just cannot handle it. This guy is just total nonsense. And my spiritual master has given him a certificate saying he's better than him. I have to defend my spiritual master. So what does Jiva Goswami do? Jiva Goswami invites Rupa Narayan to debate him. So if the student has a debate and defeats him, then that also suggests that if the student is so intelligent, the spiritual master must be even more so. But anyway, that was not Jiva Goswami's mood. His mood was to uphold the honor of his spiritual master because this rascal has just collected a certificate and he knows that this person is just doing this for his ego. So Jiva Goswami enters into a debate with Rupa Narayana and defeats him. And when Rupa Narayana was defeated in this debate, he realizes that this person's spiritual master must be extraordinary. So Rupa Narayana goes to Rupa Goswami, falls down at his feet, and says, "You should not have given me the certificate because your student defeated me, your student Jiva Goswami." Hearing this, Rupa Goswami becomes very upset with his disciple, Jiva Goswami. He calls him and he says, "Get out from here. I don't want to see you here anymore." And he explains to Jiva Goswami, what is the reason I gave that other person a certificate? He's going to waste my time in a debate. I have more important services to do. Therefore, I had no problem giving him a certificate. I am engaged in seva of my Guru, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'm engaged in personal service to the Supreme Lord. I don't want to waste a single minute debating some nonsense person. So sometimes the spiritual master will heavily chastise the disciple for not understanding and recognizing his word. Nevertheless, it's not that the disciple was wrong here. He wanted to protect the honor of his spiritual master. But anyway, Rupa Goswami banishes Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami goes up into a cave, doesn't eat, doesn't do anything, and essentially begins a fast to death. But later on, the other brother and Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, who's the older brother of Rupa Goswami. So Jiva Goswami is the nephew of both Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami. So Jiva Goswami is the son of another brother called Anupama. Anupama does not become a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He, although he is a devotee, he practices Ram Bhakt. So anyway, so Jiva Goswami is banished. Later on, Sanatana Goswami goes to his brother and chastises him. He says, Jiva Goswami did not do this out of pride. He was concerned that his spiritual master was defeated and he could not handle it. He wanted to establish the supremacy of his spiritual master. So he did it in the right mood. So you should kindly forgive him and accept him back, call him back, because otherwise he's fasting to death. So hearing this from Sanatan Goswami, Rupa Goswami welcomes Jiva Goswami back into the fold. So sometimes there are some transcendental pastimes happening between spiritual master and their disciples. But, you could say that this is pridelessness. Rupa Goswami didn't take any false pride that he knew more than this person. His concern was, I need to spend time on my services. I don't want to waste time in a useless debate and in useless certificates. Yeah. So there is one god brother of Srila Prabhupada by the name of OBL Kapoor. He asked Prabhupada once, many of Prabhupada's fellow god brothers, a few of them, went overseas because the spiritual master had given them also the same instruction, go overseas and preach in English. Then we can spread God consciousness across the globe. So Prabhupada's god brother asked him, why is it that they did not succeed but you succeeded? A couple of Prabhupada's god brothers had gone to UK and came back. Some had gone to Europe and came back. They couldn't make devotees. But Prabhupada went to United States and made 5,000 devotees across the globe. So the question was, why did the other god brothers did not succeed? And Prabhupada quoted a line from Sikshastakam, Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna amani namanadena kirtaniya sada harihi. Prabhupada said, I was completely dependent on the mercy of my Guru. Prabhupada, the great Acharya, when he went to the West, nobody knew who he was. They thought, who's this old man, dressed in strange clothes? When Prabhupada had to use the toilet, along with his disciples, he would stand in line to use the toilet, to wait his turn. A great Acharya, exhibiting humility and pridelessness. So, so humility does not mean thinking less of oneself. It means to think of oneself less. If you're thinking less of yourself, you are thinking of I. So there is still ego involved there when you think I'm useless, I'm nonsense, I am incapable, I am foolish, I am lost. You're focused on I, correct? That's not humility because your ego is very, very strong there. So you have to reduce the I and increase the focus on we or others, then that is true humility, which means less self-centeredness. When you think low of yourself, that is also self-centeredness. So we have to reduce the importance of I. Then you can come to the path of one day being less egoistic. So when you are actually enjoying the process of practicing bhakti yoga, small things do not matter to you anymore. People said something or didn't do something. These things don't bother you anymore. So small things don't matter anymore to you because you know you are not this I. You know? So these are the 20 qualities that Krishna talks about. And then let's look at the next set of some of these qualities. So the most important quality for us is Ananya Yogena. Krishna says those who are constantly and repeatedly, continuously, without any motivation, practicing devotional service to me. But what is an essential quality for a devotee to make progress? Acharya Upasanam, accepting a bona fide spiritual master. Without that, we cannot make progress. If you recall yesterday, we we talked about two analogies, right? I said I was listening to a class by His Grace Amarendra Prabhu. The two analogies is the one is the lotus and the other one is the rice in the pot that's being cooked. So the heat from the flame is the Supreme Lord, the pot is the Acharya, the Guru, and the rice being cooked inside that pot very nicely is the Jivatma. The lotus is the Jivatma. The sun is the source of energy for the Jivatma. But unless the Jivatma is in the water of Guru Tattva, the sun can just burn up that lotus if that lotus is not in the water. Similarly, if the rice comes in direct contact with the fire, it will just get burnt up and be of no use. It needs the protection, guidance, and mercy of Guru. So Guru Tattva is actually an essential quality for us to depict. So twice Krishna has stressed the importance of Guru in the Bhagavad Gita. The other important qualities, amanatvam, humility, ahimsa, non-violence, atma vinigraha, self-control, aratir jana samsadi, detachment from general mass of people. Now, what does it mean, detachment from general mass of people? We just said Krishna likes it when we preach. If we preach, we have to preach to other jivatmas. We can't be preaching to an empty room. Although there's nothing wrong in practicing your preaching in an empty room, even if there is nobody there. Detachment from general mass of people simply means don't follow what the majority is doing because the majority may be doing some nonsense. So we shouldn't fall into the mode of saying, hey, everybody is going to a New Year's Eve party to the clubhouse or wherever it is. So let me also do that because otherwise I feel I'm left out, that I am different. Sometimes we don't like feeling and being different in an obvious way. Therefore, we just join the crowd, regardless of what that crowd is doing, regardless of what nonsense that crowd may be doing. So here, detachment from general mass of people is if people are chasing material things, you don't fall into the same category. You practice spirituality, but you can reach out to the same category of people for your preaching purposes. At the end of the day, who's going to preach? To whom? We have to preach to those who are not yet connected to this parampara. Right? How are we going to achieve these 20 qualities? Well, if one takes to full Krishna consciousness, all other mentioned qualities are automatically developed. So essentially, Krishna is saying a devotee develops these 20 qualities simply by beginning the process of chanting and hearing. Over a period of time, these qualities will manifest Actually, all good qualities exist in all of us. It's just those good qualities are covered due to contamination. Once the contamination and the grime of ignorance is removed, then the good qualities come shining forth. And the best way to exhibit and uncover your good qualities is by practicing Krishna consciousness. Then Krishna talks about the soul and the super soul. So Krishna has talked about knowledge, the items of knowledge. Now Krishna is going to talk about the soul and super soul, although he has explained the soul in chapter 2. So, Jneyam yattat pravakshyami yajnat vamritamashnute anadimat param brahma nasattanna saduchyate. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So Krishna is saying the Atma, the Brahman, is eternal. It is beyond the cause and effect of this material world, and it is subordinate to me. So the soul is eternal. It does not have a date of birth. It does not have a date of expiry. Anadi is the word Krishna uses to describe the soul. The soul is always dependent on Krishna. If Krishna is not there, the soul cannot also exist. It is beyond the cause and effect of this world in the sense that the soul is occupying the body. It is the body that is experiencing all of these dualities. The soul is not experiencing any duality. The soul is just seeking for that eternal connection to Krishna. What about the super soul? Bahirantascha bhutanam acharam charamevacha sukshmatvat tadavijneyam durastham chantike chatat. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. So now we will talk about the three Vishnus. Normally, in our culture, when we speak about Vishnu, we are generally referring to Mahavishnu. But if you read the scriptures, you will come across this tattva that there are actually three Vishnus. The first Vishnu is called Mahavishnu or Karanodakashayi Vishnu. Now, the three Vishnus have different duties. Mahavishnu creates the cosmos. When the Lord breathes in, all the cosmos enters into his body. When the Lord breathes out, all the cosmos emanate from the pores of his skin and come back into a manifest state. So Mahavishnu creates all of the Brahmandas. Once all of the Brahmandas come into being, then this Mahavishnu or Karanodakashayi Vishnu expands into Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. This Garbhodakashayi Vishnu then enters into each of the Brahmandas. Millions and trillions and gazillions of universes. In each of the universe, there is a Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is like the super soul for that Brahmanda. It's the super soul for that universe, for that one universe. It is from this Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, from the navel of this Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, comes a beautiful lotus flower, and on top of each lotus flower, Lord Brahma appears. That means as many universes are there, there are that many Garbhodakshai Vishnus and that many Lord Brahmas appearing. Now, once Lord Brahma appears, Brahma becomes the secondary creator. Brahma's job is to create all of the various shapes, sizes, moving, non-moving things, etc. So the raw materials are created already by Karanodakshai Vishnu. Brahma has to use that raw energy and create the rest of the aspects within each of the Brahmanda. So when Brahma creates all of this, then the Garbhodakshai Vishnu expands into Kshirodakashai Vishnu and now enters every single atom within that particular Brahmanda. It is this Kshirodakashai Vishnu that is referred to as Paramatma. So if the Paramatma was not within each atom, nothing will function. If Garbhodakshai Vishnu did not enter each universe, the universe cannot function. So when annihilation happens, the reverse process takes place. So Kshirodakshai Vishnu merges into Garbhodakshai Vishnu, merges into Mahavishnu, and all the universes merge back into Mahavishnu. And they are in a resting state until the Lord is ready to create again. And it is this cycle Krishna has described in chapter 7. As millennium after millennium, this process goes on. Krishna describes it in chapter 8 as well. That this process is repeated, and the Lord says all the way from the top planetary systems, from Brahma on down, they go through this process of creation, maintenance, dissolution. They experience birth, death, old age, and disease. So what does the Lord mean when he says, although far, far away, he is also near to all? The Lord is far away in the sense that he resides in the spiritual world. He never leaves the spiritual world. We are talking about Krishna. He is also near to all. Well, he's there within you as Paramatma. Hiranyakashipu was searching, where is Vishnu? Where is Vishnu? Where is Vishnu, my arch enemy? Not even knowing that Vishnu was within him as the Paramatma. But he was searching for him everywhere else. I want to kill him. There is a deeper meaning also. When you invite the Lord into your life by practicing Bhakti Yoga, then the Lord is near to you. When you've kept your distance from the Lord and you're too busy with Maya Devi, then the Lord is far, far, far away from you. Because he's subtle, he's beyond the power of the material senses to see or know. So we cannot see Paramatma. We cannot know Paramatma because Paramatma is there in his subtle form within you through his energy. So the super soul pervades the entire cosmos. The super soul has hands, legs, eyes, ears, heads, and faces everywhere, which means without you being able to see anything, the super soul acts as a witness to all of your activities. So the super soul exists outside you and inside you simultaneously. And you are also inside Paramatma simultaneously. It's very difficult to understand this. How can someone be inside and outside simultaneously, and how can you be inside and outside simultaneously? The Lord does not have any material senses. He has spiritual senses. He is the source of all senses of the living entity. Hence we said, Narad Muni says, Rishikena, Rishikesha, Kevalam, Bhaktir Uchyate. Undivided. The Paramatma is never divided. Even though Mahavishnu expands into Kshirodakshai Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and then into Kshirodakshay Vishnu. The Paramatma is never cut into pieces. So, Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam, Bhakti Ruchyate. To serve the Lord in Bhakti. Now, who can know the soul and the super soul? Iti kshetram tatha jnanam yeyam choktam samasatah madbhakta etad vignaya madbhavayopapadyate. Thus, the field of activities, the body, which is the field of activities for us, knowledge, which is those 20 items that the Lord has described, and the noble is the soul and the super soul, have been summarily described by me. Then the Lord says, only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Madbhavayopapadyate. Only those who are focused on God realization can also understand all of this other things automatically. Then Krishna talks about who is the real enjoyer. The qualities of Jiva, the qualities of material nature, the qualities of the super soul, the qualities of a realized Jiva. How do you acquire this Jnana Chakshu? Jnana Chakshu means the eyes of knowledge. It's not your physical eyes that need to see, it's your consciousness that needs to see. And what's the destination? So the qualities of the Jiva, again, Krishna is repeating what he's already said. A good teacher repeats because he knows not all students are paying attention. Of course, Arjuna was paying attention, but Krishna is repeating for us because we are so forgetful in Kali Yuga. The qualities of a Jiva, he is beginningless. But then he has a hard struggle for existence when we occupy a body, because the minute we occupy a body, we become frantic. We want to enjoy. We want to explore and enjoy. And thus we get frustrated. Therefore, we have to occupy one of the 8.4 million bodies based on our activities, based on our desire, based on our karma. So that's the qualities of a Jivatma. Now Krishna is going to talk about qualities of Prakriti. Prakriti is also beginningless, but it is manifested temporarily and it keeps transforming. And this Prakriti becomes the residential quarters for the Jivatma. And this Prakriti controls the Jivatma through the three gunas, Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamogun. So a residence has to be created for us, right? Once we leave the spiritual world, for whatever reason we are separated from the Lord, then the Lord has to make separate arrangements for us. So it's this Prakriti that we are residing in and are under the control of. What are the qualities of a super soul? The super soul, Krishna has already said multiple times, he is the only enjoyer. He's the transcendental enjoyer. He's the proprietor. He permits you for whatever activities he sanctions, and he is also a witness to everything that you do. So this figure you may have recollected from one of our previous slides. The soul has a desire, the super soul has to sanction it, and then material nature then gives that appropriate body to that soul to enjoy that desire. So at the time of death, if the soul still has material desires, then nature will arrange for the body based on the instructions of the Supreme Lord as to how best that soul can enjoy that desire. So now we've understood Jivatma, Prakriti, Paramatma. Now the Lord is going to talk about the realized Jiva. What the living entity realizes when they are enlightened with knowledge. This entire six chapters, the last 6 chapters are called Jnana Yoga, right? So Krishna is going to focus on that knowledge that is necessary for us to make progress. What is it that the enlightened Jivatmas have realized? They know that we are not this body. They know we are all spirit souls. Whatever struggles we undergo, it is just temporary. It does not matter to the spirit. We need to stay focused on our sadhana. And the realized Jivatma sees the indestructible super soul as a companion, as a friend, as a helper. And the realized Jivatma also realizes that they are not the soul doer. Jnana chakshu yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam sthavara jangamam kshetra kshetrajna samyogat tadvidhi bharatarshabha. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. So Krishna is concluding by saying, everything that exists, both moving and non-moving, is simply an interaction between Jivatma and Prakriti. The field of activities is the body, and the knower of the field is the soul. How do you acquire this jnana chakshu? By understanding what is this body, by understanding the difference between the body and the soul. When we come to that knowledge, we see everybody with equal eyes, and we see Paramatma residing in the temple of everyone's body. And we ultimately are able to conquer our mind and senses. Okay? So what happens to this self-realized soul? Kshetra kshetrajnayorevam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye viduryanti te param. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage and material nature, attain to the supreme goal. So Krishna is talking about Jnana Yoga here. Jnana Yoga means analytical study of matter. Actually, Sankhya Yoga is meant to be studied in such a fashion, and I heard this in a class from His Holiness Swami Keshav Bhagan Swami Maharaj earlier in the week. And he was saying the purpose of Sankhya Yoga is to just tear apart everything and come to the conclusion that nothing on the bodily platform actually matters. So you analyze everything and break it apart. Break it apart, break it apart, break it apart until you come to the conclusion actually nothing will exist. Only the soul will exist. So Sankhya Yoga, the study of material nature, is to get you to the point to understand that you are not this body. But you do it through analytical means. You know, there is a word used in English called deconstruct. So I used to be addicted to watching cook shows many, many years ago. I could watch any number of cook shows on TV. So there was this, there came a time when some of these major chefs, let's say they would make ice cream or a pie. And let's say a pie is supposed to have a base and then a filling and some topping, etc. That makes it a pie. And then they would come up with this new dish called the deconstructed pie. Deconstructed pie means the pie no longer looks like a pie. It is a pie, but the base is separate, the filling is separate, the topping is separate, and everything else is separate. It's all arranged neatly on a plate, but it is considered a pie. So similarly, it reminds me of that analogy when you look at Sankhya Yoga, you just break apart everything. And then you realize, we're just making up our own illusions here based on the bodily platform. We're getting carried away trying to construct things and trying to stay here and enjoy ourselves. So coming back to the summary of this particular chapter, what are the wise questions that Arjuna asked? What are the items of knowledge? The items of knowledge are essentially those 20 qualities that pure devotees have, the soul and the super soul, and who is the actual real enjoyer, which is the Supreme Lord. So now coming to what is this third section all about? We said that the third section is about Jnana Yoga or Sankhya Yoga. So it's a lot more analytical in nature. So the third section of the Bhagavad Gita is about Prakriti. What is this Prakriti? This Prakriti is a prison house. How is it a prison house? It's holding us behind these three bars. What are these three bars? The Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamogun are these three bars that are preventing us from exiting this prison house. We said the second section of the Bhagavad Gita was like an interview. And if the candidate is interviewing the boss and they're happy with all of the boss's answers, then they take the job. So Arjuna has assumed that Arjuna has taken the job that Krishna has offered him in the first section of the Bhagavad Gita. This job interview is very successful. You've taken the job, you've signed the contract, you want to work for Krishna, but there's a small problem. You are trapped in jail. How are you going to work for Krishna while you're in this jail? You are trapped in this jail because of your past karmic reactions. So you have to get out of this prison house in order to work for Krishna. Of course, you can begin to work for Krishna in this prison house, but that's no fun. You've trapped yourself because of these three gunas. So this prison house is made up of Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamogun. But Krishna is so merciful. He's so merciful. Even though we have abandoned him, he has never abandoned us. He's there as Paramatma within each one of us. He offers to be our witness, not to punish us, but to help us. He's ready to become the lawyer and your attorney within who can guide you. We said that in the Vedic scriptures, there is an analogy of two birds on a tree. One bird is acting, and the other bird is the witness as the Paramatma. So essentially, this section, and specifically chapter 13, is about analyzing the nature of the universe, analyzing the nature of ourselves, and analyzing the nature of God. We should come to the conclusion that we are in a place where we should not be. Therefore, we should not get comfortable being in this prison, because the prison is preventing you from going back to Krishna and working for him. Therefore, we want to avoid and figure out how are we going to get out of this prison bar. The gunas. How are we going to overcome these three gunas? Well, Krishna is so kind. He's going to let us know in Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, when he's going to talk about these three gunas in detail. So essentially, the single word summary for chapter 13 is Paramatma. Krishna saying, I am there everywhere. I'm ready to be your attorney and guide. Once you know you're in prison, you're going to seek counsel, right? To put your case in front of the judge, to defend your case, to argue your case. What is fascinating is here, Krishna is both the attorney and the judge. Krishna is ready to act as your attorney on your behalf and convince Krishna that you need to be released from this jail. But then you need to understand how you can get out of this jail. To actually understand how these three gunas are influencing you and why you should even go beyond the sattva gun, because most of us think that if we are in sattva gun, that's good enough. Of course, that's very nice, that's good. But even sattva gun forces you to take birth again and again and again. So let us see what the Paramatma says about this three prison bars that we are behind or under the influence of. and what we need to do to get out of it, get out of this prison. So the Lord Himself is going to advise us. Join us tomorrow for Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. The three gunas, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, and how we can actually understand these three gunas in a little bit more detail, and how it is actually holding you back, and how you can actually overcome Sattva Gun, come to the state which is called Vishuddha Sattva state, which brings you close to Krishna.